I asked the business owner, how many complaints do you get on price? And he said, I never get a complaint on price. That told me automatically that his prices are too low. If you're not getting anywhere between 20 and 33% no's because of price, you're probably priced too low.
Hello and welcome to the Gross Profit Podcast. My name is James Kennedy. I'm the CEO and co-founder at procurementexpress.com. We take the hassle out of managing your SMB spend without an ERP, but we're not here to talk about that today. Instead, I've Michael Barbarita from Next Step CFO, and Michael has had 40 years of experience working in business, and unusually, certainly for most people, is his first business was a huge breakout success. But the story since then, as the phrase goes, you're either learning or earning, and it's not all been earning for Michael along the way. So we're going to try and see if we can learn from some of that experience, and Michael's an author as well, so stay around to the end to find out about his book so you can get all of this advice in black and white. Michael, you're very welcome to the show. Maybe you could start us off by telling us something about you that not many people know.
Well, thank you, James. But one of the things that not many people know is that when I bought my first business, I basically had no money. I utilized credit cards and a 25% interest rate loan, personal loan, to buy that first business.
So 25%, was that Al Capone you were getting this loan from, or who? That sounds like
almost,
outrageous.
not quite, but I was nervous about it, like I would be if I borrowed it from Al. But it was almost from an Al Capone.
Very good. And even the credit cards at this stage are 15 or 20%.
They were 20. They were 20 at the time. Yeah.
Now, would you advise any of your clients today to start a business on a 20% or 25% loan?
It depends upon the numbers, and that's what's interesting. See, you can essentially buy any business out there if you get the terms. I don't even know your business, James, but I'd pay you $10 million for your business if I could pay $1 a month for 10 million months. The point being that terms can change everything. And as long as you get the terms that you need and you're able to make it work numerically with those terms, because that's why you ask for those terms, that business will work out for you in all likelihood. Once again, it's about the numbers. It's what are the numbers telling you? What are the numbers of that particular business that you're looking to buy? And the numbers were very favorable, and we got great terms in order to buy the business, but it did include some upfront money that included these loans.
Okay, so let's start off there. It's a good place to start. This is what some people call a leverage buyout. Is that right? When you're using debt to buy a business. So tell us the story about how you came across it, the opportunity, why you thought you could justify a 25% return or loan, if you like.
Yeah. So with this particular business, I found it while I was reading the business opportunities, which was it was a Sunday type of group of listings in the Boston Globe in Massachusetts. And I saw this business that said, I think it said something to the effect of $300,000 net profit. And the business was being sold for, I think, about $500,000, something like that. And we made our inquiries. This particular seller wanted to sell when he turned 50, and he was rapidly approaching 50. One of the components of a compelling offer is urgency, where if you can spark urgency in the buyer, that makes the offer compelling. In this particular case, we had some self-inflicted urgency because he wanted to absolutely sell by the time he was 50, and we were about a month and a half away from his 50th birthday. So we were one of the only buyers that were available. So we used that leverage, believe it or not, to create terms so that we could buy it. And I was with partners, but we did, and it got very favorable terms. For example, he delivered $600,000 of inventory. We were able to pay that inventory over a year. So we sold the inventory fairly quickly, but we had a year to pay for it. Those types of terms made it very favorable for us to buy and take advantage of this. It was a business that was doing, at the time, $2.5 million in sales. It threw off a $300,000 profit. We paid $500,000 for the business, if my numbers are correct. This was back in the 80s, by the way. And by the way, we got terms we got a big seller note, and we got the terms on the inventory. We paid him an additional 600,000 for the inventory. That was inventory at cost. We were able to sell that inventory for about $1 million. And so we were holding $1 million for a long period of time before the inventory note was due.
Very good. And then, but you had to put some money down, so that's where the credit cards come in,
and that's
right?
where the credit card. That's right.
Yeah. So how much did you have to raise on? How much money did you have to put into the deal? The great thing about this deal, it's in the 80s. It's in the ancient history now, so we can openly talk about it, right? So
That's right.
And by the way, 2.5 million in the 80s. It's not chump change, right? So
no,
that's
a pretty sizable business. Yeah, we ended up having to put 100,000 down. So we had some savings, but it wasn't enough. We probably borrowed in total 50,000. We borrowed 25,000 at 25% interest, and the other 25,000 was credit cards.
And who was your partner? You mentioned you had a partner in this.
Yeah, we all played basketball together. That's how we knew each other, and we were all interested in business, so we got into it. Yeah.
So I'm going to guess you're in your 20s at this stage.
That's right.
It's quite a ballsy move, if I can use that expression, for a 20-year-old to take on whatever, 100 grand in credit card.
Yeah, I was 27, I think it was. But the reason why it wasn't is I wasn't married. Okay, so I could afford, I knew I was 27, so you could swing and miss a few times. You could swing and miss a few times and still make out okay. You have all those years that you can try something else or do something else. And even if you had to file bankruptcy, 7 years, it's a long time, but 7 years, it's all forgotten. So it just seemed like and the numbers worked. If there was an economic disaster, then yeah, that would have been a problem. But the numbers worked so well and the terms were so good, it had great potential.
Because it shows there is this idea that those deals like that are harder to find these days because people have become so-called more sophisticated.
No question. Yeah, I mean, they definitely are. You have to be at the right place at the right time. I say that if we presented this offer a year before his 50th birthday, we wouldn't have got it.
Right.
I think that had a lot to do with it. He just absolutely wanted to sell by the age 50. It was just a goal that he had for a long time, and he wanted to accomplish it. Right. And as long as he trusted the people that he was selling to, it didn't matter who he was selling to.
But this is edited a newspaper ad as well. There's also this idea that you got to spend months and years sort of networking and schmoozing and going to golf clubs and whatever. But no, like straight up the middle, saw an ad.
Yeah.
Go meet the guy.
We had competition before we were introduced to the deal. He walked away. As a matter of fact, one of the stories is that he walked away from $1 million check.
Wow.
Yeah. Down $1 million. Here you go. He ended up getting $1.1 million from us, the 500 plus the 600, but he had to wait a year for the 600. And he had to wait 5 years for most of the 500, for 400 of the 500. But he walked away about a month or two earlier from $1 million check. But the urgency of that 50th birthday allowed us to get these terms.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, we'll dive a little bit more into this story here. But before I do, you've obviously, you were coming at this looking from a finance perspective, terms and the leverage and all this sort of stuff.
Right.
So where did you get a background, that level of sophistication, even at 27, to be able to put that deal together?
I worked in private industry as a financial analyst. My background was accounting and finance. And so given that, I was able to understand their financial situation very clearly and made the calculations, did the forecasting, saw that even at very conservative levels that we were going to be able to pay back that debt quite easily. Right. And we did. We paid it off easily.
Very good. So in your book, which I can just about see behind you there, the advertising for, there we go. Yeah.
Powerful business strategy. Yeah.
One of those strategies I know is something I understand you learned early on at this business you were building. So maybe you could just tell us a bit more about the business and how you used guarantees to really change that business.
Okay. My story is back in 1999, I sold my second business successfully. That was a frozen cookie dough business. My first business, which was the ski business that I talked about earlier, sold for multiple seven figures. And at that time in 1999, I thought I could do no wrong. So after owning and exiting two businesses, I thought I had the keys to the business kingdom and that I could succeed at any business. Big ego. So in all of this glory, I started an outpatient rehabilitation facility called Freedom Therapy Center. Now, in all the successful businesses I owned, I always implemented business and financial strategies that my competition wasn't doing. That was really important to me. For example, in that first business, that ski specialty retail business, we grew the company from that $2.5 million where I bought it to $8 million in 5 years. Now, a contributing factor to that growth was a strategy called a risk reversal, where the seller in the transaction takes most or all the risk. And one of the problems that the customer had with the ski industry is they really never knew if the ski they were being sold on the retail floor was the right ski for them until they got it up on the mountain and tried it. So we implemented what we called a ski guarantee. Ski the ski 3 times, you don't like it? Bring it back for a brand new pair and keep bringing it back until we get it right. Now, just so you know, when a pair of skis gets skied on, it depreciates substantially. So my employees and my managers thought I was a little nuts as they had visions of thousands of pair of skis coming back and us losing money and them having to deal with all that extra work. But my mindset was a little different. First, I knew my competition wouldn't do it. And secondly, I determined through my research of the industry and my research of customers, that ski customers, that is, that the customer just wants a great ski experience. So we sold 8,000 pair of skis the first year we implemented it, a 25% increase, and only 8 came back. Next year, 11,000 pair, only 14 came back. And so when you fast forward to Freedom Therapy Center in 1999, where I must have taken stupid pills or something because I did exactly what my competition was doing. I marketed to doctors to get referrals. I dropped off chocolate cakes as bribes to front office staffs to get to the doctors. I offered the exact same services as my competition was doing, no risk reversals, no compelling offers, no creativity or differentiation. And I'm a financial guy, as we talked about earlier, so I know how to manage cash flow. We were hemorrhaging, absolutely hemorrhaging cash. Every month, I had to go into my savings to fund the operating losses we were having. I fell on my face, to be totally honest with you. I had to close the business. I fell totally on my face. I had to deal with all the liabilities associated with closing, and I had to pay off all those liabilities. But I learned a couple things. The 2 things that I learned was, first of all, after one falls on their face, the hardest step to take is the step after the fall, the next step. And so 30 days after I closed Freedom Therapy Center, Next Step CFO was born, which is the business I've been in ever since 2007. And then the second thing I learned is you just can't keep doing what your competition is doing. You can't keep messaging the same way your competition is messaging, like great service, high quality, lowest price. That's basically my story. And I've got this concept called I Hope So Marketing. I talk about it in the book a little bit. And what I call I Hope So Marketing is what I just said there. Is if you're talking about great service, the customer is saying, I hope so. I wouldn't go to somebody who offers lousy service. If you talk about how great quality you have, I hope so. I wouldn't buy a product of low quality. So that's why I call it I Hope So Marketing. You're doing exactly what your competition is doing. And there's ways like that risk reversal that we did. That was something that the competitors wouldn't do.
Let's talk about this a little bit, because as you're explaining it, I see that there are certain sort of laws of business, if you like, that force us all to work in a very similar way. First of all, we're largely reading the same business books, and we're all reading the E-Myth, and then we're all reading like whatever, Good to Great, and all the same books. And then there's also financial sort of gravity, which in my business I see, like, it turns out that if you want to hire someone to sell your software, they're going to need to be an OTE of something like 250 or 150, which means that, hey ho, your product needs to be worth at least 10 to 20 grand a year to sell. Hey ho, which means that all these products and services end up being priced in a very similar way, like because of the sort of economics of the business, and everyone just marches along. And you think you're doing great because you're following business best practices with a certain amount of payback or a certain amount of gross profit or whatever. But at the end of the day, the poor customer is still trying to decide which pair of skis to buy. It all looks the same, right?
They weren't, as far as the product goes, it was the same.
Yeah. And was this like, if it was one of these places where it's like a row of ski shops by a lift or something, like could they just walk
No,
next door?
we were what's called a city store, meaning we weren't, there's a mountain store, which are near the mountains, and a city store. We were a city store. And we were on the same road as one of the leading sporting goods companies at the time called Herman's, which is no longer in business. And we were down the road from the biggest specialty retailer in the state. This is within a mile. And so we had competition, but we had to get creative. And not only that, I think the most important aspect of a risk reversal is identifying the problem that the customer has and doesn't want. If you recall, when I was giving you my background there, that's that little story of how I started in the ski business, I said the problem the customer had with the ski industry was that they really never knew if the ski they were being sold was the right ski for them until they got it up on the mountain. That was very true, very true. And although it was a hotshot ski salesperson that looked the part and probably has more than 1,000 skier days under their belt, they were still, I don't know if this is really going to work for me.
Yeah.
So that was the key, identifying the problem.
Because I see a lot of sort of weak sauce, what normally are called guarantees, right? So, like 90-day money back guarantee, you just mean nothing because they all look the same. So maybe we can move on a little bit to when you've brought this into Next Step CFO and working with clients, and you sit down with clients and I imagine they say, yeah, we can offer a money back guarantee. What do you say at that stage? And maybe you can give us some examples of.
I'll give you a great example. We call it the conversion formula. Okay. When we were doing research from our book, we had to go all the way back to 1931, where we found that the key to marketing is to get into the mind of the customer. So how do you do that? Okay, but that's what in 1931, that's what was proclaimed by, I forget the author's name, but that's what he wrote about. He said, you have to get into the mind of the prospect. How do you do that? We're not mind readers. When we were writing the book, we said there's basically two emotional issues that customers, to get into the mind of the customer, you need to cover these two emotional issues. One is the problem that they have that they don't want, and one is the solution that they want that they can't find. So the first two parts of our conversion formula is identifying the problem and the solution. We call it the captivate is the problem. It's a headline, and it identifies the problem. It's the first thing that should come out of your mouth in a networking meeting or in any type of advertising or any presentation to a prospect. It's the problem they have that they don't want, called captivate. And then fascinate is the second step of the conversion formula, which is the solution to the problem that they can't find. That captivate and fascinate are the two emotional triggers to get into the mind of the customer. Because when you come up with the problem, okay, they didn't have to think about it. So therefore, they think that you are the right choice because you are the one who's going to solve my problem. And so in doing a risk reversal, you have to identify the problem that the customer has. That's the first step in doing it. Because if you identify that problem, then you could create that risk reversal to make your offer compelling.
Okay, let me be cheeky here and try and get a bit of free consulting and role play this with Procurement Express. So, what I tell people is right now we say we take the hassle out of managing SMB spend without buying an ERP. So using your formula, how well does that run, or what's the critique it for me?
Yeah. This quick analysis here. One of the problems that I see in that particular industry is the startup. In other words, the nightmare, or at least the perception, I should say, the perception of the nightmare of the first month of operation with new software.
Right.
And so it's not that I will come up with the problem. The client will come up with the problem. I'll come up with questions that will help the client deal with this problem. And by the way, every time we come up with a position of market dominance, which is, by the way, the captivate and fascinate of the conversion formula, we have to test it. I had to test I tested my risk reversal. So I assigned I had 10 salespeople on the sales floor. I assigned 1 or 2 salespeople to it to see how it would work. And after 6 months of testing in one ski season, I said, oh my God, because we didn't get anything back. We probably sold about, 200 pair of skis under it. We didn't get anything back. I said, okay, we're doing it.
But you were able to, important step there is you gave it to 2 salespeople. You didn't give it to the whole team. And then you're able to see, who's selling most? Yeah.
Right. And that's the beautiful thing about being in business. You're always able to test. I don't care what the business is. You can always test it with a certain subset of customers. You could always test it through email campaigns. Through direct talking with customers. There's always ways to test.
Okay, so I can see how it's not an easy thing. It's not a quick fix. I'm going to have to pony up the consultancy business to get to the answer there. So maybe we'll talk about that. But let's just talk about, because you have one very interesting success story where you managed to turn a $250K loss in a client business into a 10x revenue multiple sale. which it sounds amazing. So maybe you could just walk us through what happened there. How did you come across them and how did you manage to do it for them?
Okay, it's a service business and it was a referral.
Mhm.
And when I got there, they had $250,000 of operating losses for the second year in a row. And they were going into hip pocket, I call it hip pocket National Bank, when you have to go into your savings and put money into the company. So they had to go into hip pocket National Bank to fund the operation. And they were getting sick and tired of that, I'd say, to say the least. When I got in there, one of the first things I did is I asked the business owner, how many complaints do you get on price? And he said, none. I never get a complaint on price. Well, that told me automatically that his prices are too low. Because if you're not getting at least 1/3, okay, over 1/3 starts to get questionable. But if you're not getting anywhere between 20 and 33% no's because of price, you're probably priced too low. This guy, when I did the analysis, was priced very close to cost. He didn't know it.
Yeah.
So number one, we raised prices and we raised them gradually, but we raised them. That was number one. Number two, he was paying an inordinate amount for an insurance policy on jobs that that certain jobs required it. They were certain government jobs that he had to bid on. In the 2 years that he lost the $250,000, he never won a bid. But we got rid of all of that and we got rid of the insurance, and that was a big expense. Then we cut other costs. We cut salespeople that weren't doing the job, okay, and rehired other salespeople. We purchased, by the way, I had to deal with a lot of past due trade debt for the product itself. And so I put everybody on payment plans, one year payment plans, everybody, no exceptions. And so and by the way, I did it in a group setting so that they all knew they were being treated the same. Because when you do it on an individual basis and you try to make a deal, they think that they're getting the worst deal and somebody else is getting a better deal. So I got all the vendors on a call, on a conference call. There was no Zoom at the time. So I got them all on a conference call and I explained to them our payment plan for every single vendor, no exceptions. They could choose not to do business with us anymore, or they could choose to do business with us and we would pay, some part of the payment up front, and then over time we would pay the rest. So that was the deal. And so everybody knew they got the same deal and it worked out really well.
How many vendors walked away?
Only 2, and there were about 12. Only 2, because they still wanted to do business. They still wanted to do business with us going forward, and they felt confident that a chief financial officer was involved in the company, and that I made a presentation so it looked like I knew what I was doing, which I thought I did, my numbers, and show them all the numbers, and everything was transparent, by the way. You have to be totally transparent in that situation. So that was the other thing we did. And then we implemented risk reversals in that particular industry. We implemented bundling and packaging, which is another component of a compelling offer. We added more value to the product. We were able to get government assistance for rebates for the customer. We also made a financing deal with Wells Fargo so that they could, because it was a high ticket purchase. It was insulation, by the way. It was a high ticket purchase. And so they could actually get financing from us where Wells Fargo would front us the money, take a fee, and finance it. So we did that as well. And all these things the competition wasn't doing.
And the first question I want to ask about, this is a founder owner, sounds like. Whenever I hear people's prices aren't high enough, I hear that's a founder.
That's
and
a good point.
They feel personally affronted if someone says no to a deal, so they just go around discounting all day long. So no one will say no.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. And then listen, I'm a civilian with this finance stuff, so I have to ask the dumb question sometimes. A payment plan, what does that really mean? What terms or what was it?
Okay. Yeah. So let's say you have $500,000 of trade debt that's past due. Okay. So these are, in this case, it was insulation companies primarily, but it was some other people as well. There's the products that make up the insulation. So what you do is you freeze that debt as of the date you start. Okay. And then you have a meeting with everybody and say, these are the terms that we're going to pay the $500,000.
Right.
Okay. And by the way, it's usually over 3-4 years. It can be over 3 or 4 years. And sometimes, in this particular case, this guy wanted to sell his business within 2 years. So we had to pay that. We had a 2-year payment plan then. And then we had terms of what we would buy new product for.
Right.
Okay. All right. It's because you have to buy new product. We needed vendors to ship to us.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So we froze the debt. We made the announcement. We showed them a forecast because I'm a CFO. We do business and cash flow
Yeah,
forecasting. And we showed them the forecast and the terms, and everybody knew they were being treated the same because they were all on the call. And
right.
then they knew the terms going forward. And two of them took a bow. And we had some alternative vendors that we were doing business with that we had better terms with, to be honest with you. But we wanted to be loyal though to those vendors who were taking the hit. So,
Yeah. And then tactically, did you use purchase orders to enforce this then? So, the date of the terms would start on the date of the purchase order, or how was it done?
yeah, in other words, if we placed an order, there was a certain amount that would be due on delivery, okay? And then the rest would be whatever the normal terms were. The
Yeah.
normal terms were 30 days. So that's how
Yeah.
that worked. There was POs if they required them, but other than that, if it didn't require a PO, they would just ship with a portion of the payment due on delivery, and which if the shipment came from a DHL or somebody, they would ask for, we have to write a check, okay, that kind of thing. So that all
Yeah.
worked out. But it all worked out. We actually paid it off within a year, all the debt.
Yeah, I'll just pop in here with an ad for using POs, because a lot of people don't realize that if you're using POs, you're then working with that vendor on your terms, not theirs.
Very true.
So,
Very true.
and it allows you now, obviously, if you get down to reading the terms, maybe the relationship's gone south anyway, but it often can nip a discussion in the bud if you're able to then sign, basically, if you're issuing orders with order numbers, then, and you can put in whatever terms you want there, more or less. If they sign up to it and they give you the goods, you're not on their terms, you're on your terms. And then I guess you get to harmonize your terms against all your vendors. So you're not trying to wonder, what terms do I have with this versus someone else? And it makes your AP much easier and stuff.
Yeah, very
Since
true.
you brought it up, I could not mention it. All right, so let me tell you. So at the end of all that change, 2 years later, the owner wanted to sell. Did he manage to do it?
Yeah, so it was amazing because I made a cold call to one of the largest service providers in the state, and I saw that they were this large service provider, home service provider, was in a lot of different industries. Okay, a lot of different ones, and I saw them starting to go into insulation. So I made a call to the president of the company. He said he was interested because his strategic plan happened to be to build an insulation company, to build an insulation arm to his already existing service business. And so this would give him a great head start. Now the company was only making 50 grand a year. We took it from 250 loss to 50 grand positive, and we didn't think it would command such a price, but we got $500,000 for it.
10x net profit. 10x profit or EBITDA?
EBITDA.
EBITDA, yeah. Okay, now you've just said something there which really, I think, marks out what a lot of people struggle. What's a fractional CFO? What's a CFO? Are they doing my books? Are they doing my FP&A or whatever? But what you said there is the hallmark of a true CFO in my mind. So someone who's got their eye on the market. They don't just sit there. They see an opportunity to go and take it and bring it to the CEO. Say, hey, they're aware of these things going on in the market, not just. And if you're working at the moment with someone who isn't doing that for you, making you aware of what's happening in the market, maybe you haven't got a real CFO in your hands. I don't know. I mean, it's up to you to decide. But that's the power of it.
That's right. If you take all the CFOs in the Fortune 500, they don't get the job unless they're strategic. For some reason, fractional CFOs get away without being strategic. Okay. And that's why I took the time to write a book on powerful business strategies, because I wanted to be that strategic CFO. And so business owners hire us to implement business and financial strategies that their competition isn't doing.
So where can we get a copy of Powerful Business Strategies?
You can go to my website, nextstepcfo.net, and it's right there. You'll be able to pop up. You could download the book.
Very good.
It's free. It's free. It's free. No charge.
Okay, awesome. I'm on my way. You know what I'm doing these days? I'm taking books like that and I'm putting it in Notebook LM from Google. And then it does like an audio podcast version of it. And I get to consume it all and it's synthesized and stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. So I like listening to these things. So that's my shtick. Michael, this has been awesome. We're going to wrap it up with my traditional question here at the end, which is, who's your business hero and why?
I would say Warren Buffett. I think the guy is absolutely brilliant. He not only understands stocks, but he understands business as well. And he has a formula for buying companies, which I'd be dying to know. And it's not just a financial formula. Obviously, he has to really, the CEO of those companies has to resonate with him and so forth, which is important. But he seems to have a financial formula for buying companies. And it's interesting. It's not just a multiple of earnings and all that stuff. I think he has a bunch of adjustments that he makes to the financial statements in order to figure out whether or not that business is right for him.
And all our heroes have, maybe not, but some of them have a dark side. So you like his ability to maybe pick deals.
Right.
What's the trade-off there? What do you not like that he's have to give
The
up?
trade-off is he doesn't talk enough about business strategy so that I could hear what goes on behind the scenes. And that formula that I'm almost positive, I'm not sure, but I'm almost positive that he has, that financial formula. He'll take the financial statements and make adjustments to them to be able to find the right companies to work with. And because he's not open about that stuff, that's the downside.
All right. Thanks, Michael. And I'm going to talk to the listeners now for a second now and thank them for coming along today and sitting with us. I encourage you to check out nextstepcfo.net. Also, go to procurementexpress.com/partners if you're a fractional CFO and you want my take on how fractional CFOs can explain their value to CEOs in a way that they would understand. You can sign up for that webinar there and let me know what you think. Michael, I've learned a lot on this call. I think you really have a truly standout bit of advice and you're clearly in that cadre of CFOs who've been there and done that and have the scars and the rewards to show for it. So thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, James. Had a lot of fun.